Hi, I'm Martin Jarvis, and once again I want to welcome you to Listen. Eastern Europe, Ukraine's going through a lot of turmoil, and the entire world is in an uproar. It is interesting that so many other folks around the world have suffered tremendously more than those Ukrainians at the hands of the United States and at the hands of Israel, backed by the United States. Thing is, Palestinians, brown folks, and black folks. Iraqis, brown folks and black folks. Iranians, brown folks and lighter brown folks. Afghanis, brown folks and black folks. Ukrainians, white folks. It's a big difference. And I don't know if it's really a conscious thing. I was having a discussion with my daughter, who I've raised her to be very intelligent in certain private schools and all. So now we have very interesting debates, you know. I told her the other day, don't worry so much if you don't agree with me. Just give me a good argument, you know. And so I put a lot of the racial issues that we have, like the white privilege type attitude in this nation, as being more subconsciously motivated than conscious, in that we are more comfortable with and we prefer folks that look like us. I think black folks can agree, you know, we feel more comfortable around black folks. We prefer black folks. And given the opportunity to do a favor, we'll probably do more of a favor for black folks. And white folks are the same way. I think it's just human nature to be more comfortable with, to prefer, and probably give better treatment, maybe not even on a conscious level, to people who remind us of us, okay? I think the problem arises when you have an individual or an institution that is in authority or in power, and they exhibit those same preferences toward people who they identify with. Or the lack of preference to people who they don't identify with. That's when it becomes a problem. And so I believe what we've seen in the Ukraine is an extreme sympathy from many folks in this nation, simply because those folks in the Ukraine are more easily to identify with than many of the folks in the Muslim countries that we have been dropping tons of bombs and discharging weapons in their lands, you know. And so I think this is a very good opportunity for black folks to recognize what we're up against in this nation. Because I think we've been here long enough to recognize that they are not going to change, okay? And, you know, as much as I'm a fan of Angela Davis, you know, I don't think communism is the answer either. See, I think I'm more of a practical, pragmatic person. You know, I've been, you know, sort of mindful of the movement since the 70s. You know, I was a fan of the Black Panthers. I was a fan of Angela Davis. I was a fan of Eldridge Cleaver, Kathleen Cleaver, Huey Newton, you know, and all those folks back in those days. I was young, but I was a fan. And from then, even up and through now, I've had a particular mindset that I believe was shaped in the 70s, okay? And it's like there was a time, like the Panthers, you know, they formed in Oakland because the Oakland police were abusing the black residents of Oakland. So these were like law students, Huey Newton, and these were educated young people who were getting their education. They would have rifles, weapons, and law books, and when a black man was pulled over by the Oakland police, they would stand about 8 feet away to make sure that black motorist would be getting fair treatment, okay? You really can't do that today, okay? You'd end up dead. So you can't do the things that we did before, okay? They're not going to work. And even things like Martin Luther King and his marches, and taking abuse by the people and by the police and all that stuff, that's not going to work today either, because that's all they're going to get you is a black eye. It's not going to help your cause any, because our society has changed. So when you look back on previous strategies that black people used to garner their rights or to protect themselves, a lot of those things wouldn't work today, okay? And so let's all move back to Africa. I've seen some folks on social media trying to suggest that. Really? So many things that just don't make sense. And so this thing like, national, give us a piece of the United States for our own nation, that's never going to happen. So as much as I want change, I don't entertain things that are ridiculous, that are never going to happen. The things that I wish they would. I wish they'd free all the black people from prison. Statements like that. It's not going to happen. So why even waste the time? Why even waste the mental energy, even considering something that is never going to happen, okay? And electing people into office. Look, we had Barack Obama in there. Great man, great president. Did a lot of good things. But the situation still remains the same, okay? And so I think what we've gotten a chance to see with this Ukraine-Russian situation and the sympathy that white, and not even talking about the rest of the world, but white folks in this nation have to the suffering Ukrainians, even in spite of the fact that it's come to light that they were a racist nation, mistreating the African, the blacks, and the Indians and the Asians, that they've been extremely racist nations, even to the point where many of their citizens trying to flee the country because of the war, they won't let the black people on those trains. That's kind of interesting. So it has given us a chance to see is some real problems regarding race in the Ukraine. And then recognizing, we might expect, because of the way the Republicans and the Democrats, their ideologies and the bantering and bickering back and forth, and Fox Network and MSNBC, so you got the conservative and the liberal always fighting each other. You wouldn't expect the conservative side to be that too much concerned about immigrants or black people or brown people or whatever in a white nation. I mean, that's just that's just what as they have presented themselves. And then you find the Democratic Party, it's always for the suffering, always for the brown, the black, the immigrants, and all this stuff. That's what we've seen in this nation. But what we're seeing in the Ukraine, that none of the news organizations, even the liberal Democratic, MSNBC and the CNN and all these left political politicians, none of them are saying a word about the suffering black folks, brown folks, Asian and Indian folks in the Ukraine. And so that really it's a good thing this has happened, because it's allowing us to recognize that we've been putting our eggs in the wrong basket. We've been expecting a group of people, a political organization, to be on our side, when really their sustenance is based on there never being a resolution to the conflicts that we have in this nation. The sustenance of the Republican Party, the sustenance of the Democratic Party, they need us to be at odds. They don't need a resolution, because that's what they run on, and that's what their job is all about. It's sort of like a doctor, issuing herbal remedies for diseases and for afflictions that they're getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to treat. Why would they? What would the incentive be? Okay? So we could see by the crickets coming out of the Republican Party, coming out of the Democratic Party, and nobody is talking at all about the blacks. If it wasn't for social media, if it wasn't for TikTok, I would have never known. I found out early on, posted stuff on Facebook and got no response from my liberal Democrat. I didn't expect any response from the Republican conservative friends, because that's, the way it is. But I was expecting my Democrat liberal friends to be as amazed that I was, that, I didn't know this, and, but now they don't, there's nothing. There's no words coming out of them. So then you wonder, why, if they're really liberal and Democrat and have a heart for immigrants and black folks and brown folks that are suffering, why is it they're not speaking about the Ukrainians' treatment of people of color in their nation. Because let me tell you something. To me, now I say this about the police, and so let me use the police analogy and then apply it to white Americans. I don't care what political party you're from. That's, and to preface it first, I'm not really impressed by Democrat white folks that are liberals, that are even out there Black Lives Matter flags. Because at the end of the day, from the time they were born, throughout their education, from grade school to junior high school to high school, through college, through their work careers and job opportunities and all, they've all benefited from being white. That's the white privilege. So no matter what you say, you've benefited. Now I'm not faulting you for benefiting, but I'm just suggesting that you have benefited. Man, I was accosted by white teachers when I was in the 4th grade. 3 adult white teachers badgering me into tears, accusing me of something that I didn't do. This is in the 4th grade. I don't even know what age that was. And I was just crying, and these are bullies. I've been bullied by teachers all the way up through grade school, the 6th grade as well. Then you got a little older, of course wasn't going to happen. But the point is, that's the white privilege. They haven't had to suffer, even through childhood, what black people had to suffer through childhood. So excuse me if I don't really praise you for holding that Black Lives Matter flag as a white person, but you've benefited just as much as anybody in this nation. And so what I'm saying, and I don't blame you for benefiting. I'm just saying you benefited from the system as it is, okay? And so I'm telling that the black people, especially, because we kind of grow, we miss this. We don't get to see it, We see these folks see the presidential elections. This last election between Trump and Biden, that has zero to do with black people. The election between Hillary and Trump, that had zero to do with black people. You just had 2 rich, wealthy white people that wanted to be president. And the same with the next one. You say, well, this guy's a little nicer than that guy. That guy was harsh. Maybe so, but it wasn't about black people. And so we just need to recognize, we don't need to waste our ammunition. We need to look for the right fight to begin to involve ourselves in. Even this thing in the Ukraine. We have to see that those people are really racist and harsh toward black people in that nation. Look, they're trying to escape. They're trying to escape the Russians coming there, blowing everything up, and they're kicking black people off the train. Imagine that. Nobody's showing that. Get on TikTok. TikTok is the place. Not even really YouTube. TikTok. You'll see it. So I'm just saying, you're not hearing anything from I hate to use the liberal media. I sound like I'm on the other side, but I'm not. I'm on no side. Come on, I'm a black man in America. I'm not political. And to be a black man in America and attach yourself to a particular party when things are not equal, after all these years, come on now. Somebody's dragging their feet on both sides. I'm just saying, it's foolishness for a black person in America to believe that they're really part of a political party where they're not equal in that land. If you're calling yourself political and you've affixed yourself to a political party, whichever side it is, they're simply using you for your vote. Remember Hillary when she was running for the primary against Obama and she was telling the folks that he was not electable? Come on, this was Bill's wife. This was the first black president's wife. Remember? That's what we named him. Oh man. Now this thing in Ukraine is very excellent to begin to see what we're really up against. We're on our own here. We should have known this already. Come on now. All these years, come on now. Emancipation, 1864, still jacked up. We weren't even freed in 1864. The deal with the Emancipation Proclamation was that the southern states that had slaves, if they would be a willing part of the Union, they could keep their slaves. It wasn't freeing the slaves. Shoot, man. The deal was that if you Southern states joined willingly were a part of this union, you can keep your slaves. As well, even throughout the war, the Civil War. Come on. We see these movies where the black slaves would run away and the Union soldiers would take them in. Nah, the Union soldiers were capturing them and giving them back to the slave masters they ran away from. There was this one particular rendition story related where they had caught these two little black boys that had escaped from the slave master. The Union soldiers cut off their ears and sent them back. So this. Now you had a couple good Union officers that recognized that there was a strategic, benefit to keeping the black folks and to hiring them on. But man, there were standing orders among the Union Army that they could not take in runaway slaves, and in fact they had to return them to their slave owners. So let's just be real about what's been going on here. Now what else is very interesting is that there have always been free blacks. I mean, even from like the 1700s all the way up, there have always been free blacks that could vote, free blacks that had land. There were free blacks. But what's very interesting is that as the years went on, incrementally, each state was slowly taking away the rights of the black people. And so what I get from that, I'm just now reading W.E.B. Du Bois's Black Reconstruction, and it's very, very interesting. that what I'm getting from that is that so you had during the time when black folks were being heinously enslaved, heinously treated, killed, murdered, enslaved, just every heinous act you could imagine, there were free blacks around. Okay? And so now I'm trying to understand what could have possibly been on the mind of these free blacks that were prospering in the land. Well, it ain't us. I'm just not going to say anything. I'm doing fine. But eventually, even those free blacks got what they had taken away from them, okay? And so what I'm saying, even here today, we need to recognize the difference, I think, between the civil rights movement, say in the 50s and 60s, and even 70s compared to what's going on here today, is that black folks that are doing well have no real incentive to put themselves on the line. I mean included. I put my kids through private school. I'm doing this. I'm working. I'm nice neighborhood, nice cars, and all this stuff going on. It's very difficult to think that I would sacrifice what I have simply because everybody isn't doing well. That's important because that is a reality. And so we're really not willing to sacrifice like folks of old did just to get up to where they got. But see, we really haven't gotten up any much further than what Martin Luther King and them sort of ushered in back in the day. You're still killing black people. And if somebody didn't happen to catch it on film, they're going to be exonerated, whether they're civilian or police. So we're still in a pretty dismal situation. And we want things to be better. But what I'm suggesting is for the past 40 years or so, stuff has just plateaued out, not really gotten any better, just remained 40 and 50 years, just remained where black folks are better off than they were way, way back, but we still are not totally equal, okay? And so what I'm suggesting is that we cannot, again, looking at Angela Davis, who's still alive, who's still professor, giving talks and everything, I don't buy the communist thing. Not because it's evil, but simply because you can't find a perfect form of government, the textbook form of government, to be living up to what their definition is. So you're going to have a land like Russia that's communist, but Putin isn't equal to the people in that land. He's got money here. He's got all this stuff. See, the true essence of that whole communistic idea is that everyone is on the same level, economic level. And in every few years, the leadership changes from someone who's on that. They're on the same economic level. So it's not like you got some real rich guy coming into power. You're not going to have some military guy or some evil guy or some crazy dictator in there. The true concept of communism is going to allow everybody to have a shot. Okay, everybody that wants one. So I don't see that. That's sort of like me, being a minister, a Christian minister that sees the flaws in every religion, including the Christian religion. And I had a brother approach me, about talking about Islam. It's like, why would I give up one set of bondage for another set of bondage? So even as a matter of a government, why give up our form of government for another form of government when none of them are actually the textbook example on what that form of government is supposed to be like, okay? Because you got that human factor in there, that corrupt human factor that's messing things up. Okay, so all this is to say that we're still in a mess as black people in this nation. Maybe not in a mess as we were like 70 years ago, but we kind of plateaued, okay? Where we can kind of get fat, we can get kind of well off financially in this realm. But as far as going this way, or really being influenced in the institutions, like that we really don't have that kind of effect. We are still subject to those institutions. And so being the pragmatic person that I am again, I have to, and I've been busting my brain lately, even the past couple of years, trying to find a way for us to be well. And I believe I've found it. I have found a way for black people to be well, even given in 1 year. In 1 year. But see, the problem is it's not going to be without sacrifice. And so the question is, what are black folks willing to sacrifice? Okay, now, are you willing to sacrifice your livelihood? Are you willing to sacrifice your life? Are you willing to sacrifice your job? I'm not, okay? So and most folks are not. This is just a sign of the times. I think we've progressed to the point where, we are comfortable. We're in a different place. And so we're not ready to sacrifice our children's education, the neighborhoods we live in, our homes, our lives, our livelihood, and all that stuff. But isn't there another way? And I say, yes, there is another way. We have to begin to look at our lives and how we're living. And before we start, though, I want to tell you something about, I want to compare something that we're doing today that reminds me of sharecropping and slavery. And this just hit me the other day, and this is an issue that a lot of us as black people have in this nation. This is an issue that a lot of people have in this nation, regardless, of their race. But we're renting. We're renting where we live. Okay? And what's the problem with that? Okay, now consider this. Consider slavery. How you had the slaves that say would work in the fields, whether it's cotton fields, sugarcane, wherever they were working in the fields, right? And the slave master, the slave owner, would house the slaves. They may beat up shack or, terrible condition and everything, but was somewhere for those slaves to live. As well, there would be food for those slaves to eat. Wouldn't be the best food, It might be the pig guts instead of the pork chops, but it was always enough to sustain life, okay? Where they lived and what they ate. But still, the fruit of their labors, the result of their labors would go to the master. And what the master would earn from their labors was far exponentially greater than whatever the slaves had, where they had to live, or what they had to eat, what was left over for them, okay? Sharecropping, the same thing. So then slavery was like illegal, And so the sharecroppers in the South, they would be able to live on the land, live in a house, probably all beat up piece of house, work the land, and they would pay the owner way more than they were able to keep for themselves. Okay, that was sharecropping. So then what is renting today? Renting is just another form of that sharecropping. It's just another form of that slavery. So renting. So I have a house a few miles from here, kind of a small house, a lot smaller than mine. And I have a tenant. And that tenant doesn't work for me. That tenant works for another company, works for another place. But then every month they give me way more than they're allowed to keep for themselves, just to live in that house. So in a sense, it's like the sharecropping or the slave living in a house that I've provided. Now, but they're working in another another plantation in another place where they're getting all this money and giving me most of it to stay in my little house. Sharecropping. The key of the sharecropping concept was so that sharecropper would never be successful, would never make it, will always be relegated to living in that house, working on that field, and giving the owner most of the produce, most of the product, most of the whatever they got from it, so that the owner could make money. There was never a chance, an opportunity for that shareholder or the slave to progress. And so today, when you rent, when you're renting a place to live at the rates that we have today, you simply relegated yourself to being in that position probably for the rest of your life. As black people, we need to realize this and begin to find a way out of that situation so we can own our home. It doesn't have to be a fabulous home. And let me just be clear. For an individual with a nice house, paying a mortgage, I mean, on paper, okay, fine, that's your house, but really it isn't. You're doing the same thing the renter is renting. You're living in a place, you're paying money to stay there, and if you ever stop paying, you'd have to leave. We, as black people, trying to find our way out, need to make sure we own property. Yeah, I see it in the neighborhoods, as I was a mailman in the hood for like 25 years or so. A lot of times you find some old folks, they'd have some property, they would pass away, leave the property to their kids would just let it go, not make, even the property tax payments, and the house would be lost. Or they'd just sell it for the quick money, which whatever quick money they earned within a year, their share of the money would be gone anyway, okay? Property, I was telling my daughter the other day, and I bought this house for like 20 grand some years ago. Making like over $900 a month on it. Almost like I have, that same concept. But I could probably pull $100,000 if I sold that property today. Am I going to sell it? No, never sell. Appropriate property, hopefully with a house on it, and never sell it. Try to creatively make money, maybe live there. Make money, purchase another one, move, rent it out. Never, ever, ever sell. There's this thing in economics that called scarcity. And scarcity is something that gives something its value, okay? And the way a thing gets its value is the less of it there is, the more value there is on that product. We see that with the economy all the time. If you have a surplus of something, the price is going to go down. But if something is scarce, the price is going to go up. Well, there's no more land on planet Earth. There's none. That's why people, man, I get these calls all the time. You want to sell your property? You want to say, no, I'll never sell the property. Because the longer you have it, the more it's going to be worth. And not even just hang on to it and try to appropriate more. Because the thing is, there's always going to be people going through dismal times, going through situations, and they can't maintain. Find a way to acquire more. I mean, I always, my focus later in life were bank-owned properties. But even now, that's hard for the regular guy to purchase because you got these big old companies consolidating millions of dollars. Those bank-owned property realtors, they don't even want to talk to you anymore for real. I was speaking to someone recently about HUD properties, and she was telling me that she has a real nice house, and what she did was she bought it, and she was able to, but you have to live in it for like a year before you could sell it or do anything with it, right? So she lived there for a year. And I'm like, my wife ain't going for that. I say, yeah, but if I were young, if I were single, I'd be doing those type things, okay? Find some way to get your hands on some property. Now we're going to go forward now here because I wanted to lay that groundwork because some of you are sitting there thinking, well, I can never do that. Well, there's most things we can never do that are outside of our reach if we're not willing to sacrifice, okay? This isn't an infomercial. I'm just talking to black folks today, things that we can do, okay, so we can be better in life. So I was considering all this stuff, man. Oh, and I was telling my daughter, never ever sell. And I was telling her, she's like in the 11th grade. I'm thinking she's getting ready to graduate next year, of course. She wants to go to law school. She wants to be an attorney. I mean, we just have a lot of talks, father and daughter talks. We were talking about that, talking about a lot of good things. So I was telling her, would you get a little house, when you can, when you first start working. Small one, not like ours. And eventually get it paid off and rent it out. Move somewhere else. Keep doing the process as you're growing. As you're a young person making money and making more money, be doing this all along the way, okay? This is what parents do, man. All the stuff I should have done, I just make sure my kids do it, okay? And she got it, smart girl. And so let's consider our situations today. Getting back to where we're at, we're kind of jacked up, equality-wise. And I think we learned that we can't expect them to help because they're not going to change. They don't mind holding a Black Lives Matter sign up for you, but they're benefiting from this situation. And I'm saying if you had half of the nation of white people in this nation, and all of the black people, and all of the brown people, all the yellow people, pretty much, of course there are outliers, we're not talking about those. After 150 years, this situation, we should not be living in this situation if everybody was serious. So somebody's not serious, okay? So we're going to talk about a plan right now that I came up with that will cure the situation that we're living in 1 year. But it's going to take sacrifice. Now let me use an analogy. Use myself, my body, for example. I was just a regular guy, just going out every night, drinking. This was before I was married, drinking and getting that buzz and eating wrong. And it wasn't exercising. I was a martial artist when I was younger, but there was this time I was just living a crazy, destructive life, just having fun, seemingly. And then one day I had this epiphany that this just wasn't right. This lifestyle just wasn't going to work for me. And immediately I stopped getting the buzz. I stopped drinking. I used to go out into the clubs every single night of the week. I also kept my alcohol cabinets full of different kinds of alcohol, bottles, and growing my own. That was my life, okay? And overnight, I stopped. That was 35 years ago. I was 28 then. I'll be 64 this year. And the benefits, I'm in pretty good health for a 64-year-old man. As many of you know, I do like 50 push-ups every morning. I do a 40-minute cardio each day. I try to each day. I try to eat right, eat healthy. Of course, I don't go out anymore. I don't drink anymore. I don't smoke. I don't do any of that kind of stuff anymore. And I have a pretty good life. And so all those changes that I made when I had my epiphany, in time, being consistent, more money was available. Another job came about. And even my last job, it was a good job, corporate America, but I really wasn't total because I was buzzed, a lot of the time. So I couldn't be sharp. I couldn't be totally efficient. So where I've been for the last 28 or so years, I've been efficient. I've been sharp. I've been sharp-minded. I've been productive. As many of you know, when I was 50, I went back to school. It took me 10 years, earned my MBA. Because I have a different mind than I had back in those days. And I've been prosperous. The finances, I have a nice home. I have a rental property. I have cars. I have a nice halfway sane family. Life is just going well. I have a good name, a good reputation, good health. All these things are a result of a particular decision I made about my life at a particular time. Because those decisions just didn't, I'm going to stop doing these things. There were things that were a result of me stopping from doing these things, and they made me very prosperous. Okay, that's the point. And so, as I correlate that to black folks today, what we need to do, first I want to ask you, do you? Most of us know about the Montgomery boycott, Montgomery, Alabama boycott, 1955 to 1966. 1 year, started December 5th. 1955, ended December 20th, 1956, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Actually organized by a bunch of women, in Montgomery, but they chose Martin Luther King Jr. to be the representative, okay? and they had that boycott where the black people were not allowed to sit in the front of the bus, right? We know that. They had to sit in the back. And if the bus was full, they had to stand up, even if they were closer to the back. They had to let the white person sit down. It doesn't matter if he was a man and the black person was a woman. It doesn't matter what the situation was. White folks were preferred. Now what's interesting is the bus fare was the same for black folks and white folks. They had to pay the same fare. I feel like that, when I go to a restaurant or I go to a fast food and they give you a halfway, cold food, or it's not even made right or whatever, I'm saying, you should have just given me a discount. Don't charge me the regular price if you're not going to give me the right, food, right? So same with that bus. The bus man, they were charging him the same fare, but they were treating him dismal. Why? Because they could. Because they knew that you had maids, you had people going to the little jobs, you had workers, and they depended on the bus to get them to where they needed to go. So there was no incentive for the bus company to be merciful to black people because they knew the black people had to ride the bus. But they decided they were going to boycott the buses. They got together, they carpooled, they worked it out. A lot of the white women who had maids, black maids coming to their house, they were even part of the carpools because they knew they weren't trying to clean that house. They weren't trying to take care of those kids. So it was a concerted effort among many of the citizens, primarily black citizens of Montgomery, Alabama, to carpool, to do and walk, to ride bicycles, to do whatever they had to do so they would not ride those buses. That bus company, it didn't even take a year. They were going out of business. All of a sudden they changed. They changed their attitude. Okay, fine. And so that's what I'm sharing today. There's a way. When we look at the liquor industry, that's a $60 billion industry. We look at the nightclub industry, it's a $20 billion industry. We look at the cannabis industry, it's a $25 billion industry. We look at the lottery industry, that's a $28 billion industry. If black people would all of a sudden just stop utilizing these things, stop drinking, stop getting high, stop using the lottery, stop using all the things that we put all of our money into, things will change. So this is the sacrifice. Are we willing? Are we able? Can we do that? If we're not, this is where we're at forever in the United States. Think about it. We got to give up those things. We have to sacrifice. It's better for our health anyway. All the things we're doing are destructive. We're looking for pleasure, have a good time so we'll feel good. Why? Because our situation is dismal. Why do we have to create good feelings? Why do we have to get high? Why do we have to get drunk? Why do we have to hopefully play this lotto so we can maybe, have some hope? Because our lives are dismal. We need to put them in check. Stop creating money for these businesses who don't have an incentive to do us right. Just like those bus companies didn't have an incentive because they knew we were going to ride the buses anyway. Do this. Kick this around. We're going to cover this next program. In the meantime, I want to thank you once again for joining me and listening. And I want to invite you to listen again. You take care. Bye.